Hey, what's up, guys? This is Durian Productions. This is actually my third time experiencing an HP laptop because in China we don't really like HP a lot because it's from United States, but still it's a very good brand and their products are fantastic. So currently we have an NV x330 13. Forget about those model numbers. So it has a Ryzen 5 4500U processor, 8 GB of RAM, 8 GB of RAM, 512 GB of storage, and a 13-inch touch display and compatible with HP stylus. So the seal looks quite ugly. Anyway, after you open the seal, you can find out that the laptop box feels quite premium, and there's some manuals, chargers inside. Unfortunately, it doesn't come with a pen. By default, you will need to spend about something like 500 RMB or 300 RMB for the pen. But anyway, it may vary in your region. So there is a 65 watt charger, and unfortunately it's not Type-C standard. Still the laptop can work with Type-C standard charger without any problem, so there's nothing to worry if you bought with such type of traditional charger. So after you peel off the plastic wrap, you will find out that the laptop feels very premium and well crafted on hand. It's very light. The mass is nicely centered, and although it's 1.3 kilograms, but it's not as heavy as many other 1.3 kilogram laptops. Some other laptops are only just 1.1 kilograms, but it still feels like something. But this is definitely fantastic. It feels solid and not really mass on your hand. So I really like the design. So the gray also looks fantastic. It's not really shiny like the silver models or gold models from other manufacturers. And the soundbar, the hole are very small and it looks well crafted. So is the plastic stand. It's not very intriguing like Lenovo or Dell, which feels very cheap. So one thing about this type of convertible is that you can really flip the screen all the way to the other side, and during some presentations you will find it very easy. If you and your customer, you're just in the sharing room, and you can just share and draw to your customers and increase the presentation possibility. So if you look at the connectivity, there's one micro SD card USB port. This is very good. So HP is really working on this to make the chassis slimmer. At the back side, there is a pretty wide fan area and an NV sign. So on this side, there is a 3.5mm headphone jack, another USB port, and a Type-C port, which is also capable of charging the laptop. There are not very a lot of ports, but considering the thickness of the laptops, it's pretty decent and much better than many other laptops without any USB-A port. After opening the laptop, you can feel the size of the laptop is very small, and the keyboard, the trackpad are almost squeezed into the chassis, but still the keyboards feel pretty nice. It's not as good as any Lenovo keyboard because HP is not really any professional in making keyboard, but it's still pretty wide to use, and the size of the keycap is pretty decent. The travel is okay, but not really great because the laptop is very thin. There's one thing on the laptop is that there is a fingerprint sensor built in. I'm not sure if you are able to find it. There is one key missing. The trackpad is also pretty big. It's pretty pleasant to use. We have already set up the operating system. So for this laptop, although the power button is built into the keyboard, you will find that the travel and the response of the power button is very different from other keys, and you won't be able to press the power button if you're just typing and off your power when you work with a Microsoft Office or PowerPoint. So it's not really a problem for me myself. So what you can see is that I'm using a Type-C cable to charge it, which is very nice. The screen looks gorgeous. It's splendid. The color is vivid. The brightness are very high. So I would like to say it's one of the best screen I know in such a price range. So the response rate on this laptop is also fantastic, top-notch. So considering the hardware, it's definitely not the top-notch, and the thermal, because the laptop is so slim, the thermal definitely will have some constraint, but while it's still running very smooth and much smoother than my expectation. So HP, congrats, the optimization is very good. So if you are looking for a laptop for everyday work office, so this is definitely the #1 choice. It's definitely not the king for benchmarks, I would like to say, but it will definitely give you very smooth and happy everyday usage experience. Now let's just try to open a YouTube video, the London Tube Singer, to take a look at how it sounds and feels.
Tell me how you feel. Are you even real?
Our next guest, all she was trying to do was catch a train in the London Tube, and now she is one of the hottest videos on internet. Here's why.
Finish the lyrics. Tell me something, girl. Are you happy in this modern world?
Or do you need more?
Wow.
Keep
going.
So hardcore.
Wow, you're really good. Keep going.
I'm off the deep end. Watch as I dive in. I'll never meet the ground.
Wow.
Crash through the surface where they can't hurt us. We're far from the shallow now.
You're brilliant.
And then her life changed. Here to perform Shallow from Essex, England. Please welcome Charlotte Aubrey.
Tell me something, boy. Aren't you tired trying to fill that void? Or do you need more? Ain't it hard keeping so hardcore? I'm falling.
So if you look at the overall video quality experience, it's far superior than most startup brands in Dell, in Lenovo, and ASUS. The sound is impressive. You can even shake your small tables. You can feel the tremble. The screen is also very bright. Contrast ratio pretty high. There's one thing not that good is that the leaking of the keyboard backlight. So there is some backlight leaking, although it's definitely kind of the design, but I don't really like that. So apart from the splendid video experience, we just go into some internals. The internals is not as impressive, so it's just a standard Ryzen R5-4500U. This is definitely good enough for everyday work. The RAM is a dual-channel DDR4 on board, but kind of unfortunate. This model only comes with 8 GB of RAM. But luckily, at the production of this video, there is already 16 GB of RAM model on the market. So definitely go for the 16 one. It will give you a lot of confidence using it in the future. The screen is from BLE China. It's one of the top LCD manufacturers, so no worry about that. The screen quality is just number one. Then we just move to the solid-state drive. It's a Samsung One PM981A, one of the fastest NVMe drive up to date. So there is nothing to complain about. Many other laptops, they are using kind of slower NVMe drives. So look at the benchmark tables on the screen. You can find that the Cinebench R15, the score is actually very high, 833 CB and 172 CB for multi-core and single-core respectively. So that's why we find that everyday performance is so good. The BMD raw speed test, as we all know, that it's not optimized for AMD, except for Intel and NVIDIA. So you will find the laptops a bit struggling in this test. But if you look at the speed of the solid-state drive, it's just fantastic, super fast, lightning fast, and the memory and the cache speed is also pretty decent, and the latency is pretty good in the range of AMD processors. So it's quite unexpected that this laptop, the performance is pretty good, not kind of pathetic from HP. Really a praise for HP, 1 point for HP. So there's nothing to complain about. Even you just buy this laptop for everyday work, wow, the performance just splendid. Now let us just move to the stability test. So just 1 or 2 minutes earlier, it is still running benchmarks, and after 1 minute, the temperature already dropped to 35 Celsius degree. The thermal cooling is fantastic, and the CPU frequency is decently low now. So built-in is a pretty large battery. So we come back to this a bit later. So now let's on the CPU stress test. So after on the stress test, it will first stabilize at 2.5 GHz, 2.4 GHz for some time, and then rise to 3-point-something GHz, 3.5, 3.8 GHz. Now the power envelope goes to 30 watts and then drops slightly to 22 watts with a 3.5 GHz frequency. So it's very high and very stable. Still, the temperature is okay, which is 75 Celsius degree. You cannot really feel too much noise and too much heat on the chassis, but it's still the early stage. After 10 minutes of stability test, you can see that the frequency dropped to 2.9 GHz after 10 minutes of stability test. Currently, the power envelope is limited to approximately 14 watts. Considering the thickness of this laptop, it's a very good score, 14 watts to 2-point-something GHz. This is fantastic, 6 score. And what is even better is that there is minimum amount of noise, although there is some. It's definitely not zero, and the temperature is just 67 Celsius degree, which is very low. You can hardly feel anything on the metallic chassis. After the CPU stress test, we move to CPU plus GPU stress test for both. So we first go for GPU alone. Strangely, it will take some time for the GPU to work on full. So after some time, it is able to run at full at 17 watts with about 1.6 gigahertz, if I'm not wrong. So the good thing is that you won't find any problem if you are running general games, which is not that much CPU intensive. Your frame rates will be fantastic. Oh, sorry, 1.5 gigahertz, my mistake. So then let's just add CPU into the test as well, definitely. So the frequency drops slightly a bit, both the CPU and GPU. Now the CPU is 2.7 gigahertz and GPU is slightly less than 1 gigahertz, 800 megahertz, something like that. So it's a pretty decent value. Currently, the power envelope was pretty similar as the previous test is still 22 watts. So after some time, approximately, let's say 5 minutes, the stability test, we can just move back and check will the laptop still run at a good frequency. After 5 minutes of stability test, so both CPU and GPU frequency drops a bit. GPU about 500 and 600 megahertz, and CPU around 2.2 gigahertz. This is not that much great if you are doing gaming, but it's definitely pretty acceptable and a lot better than the previous year's Ryzen 3000 series, and a lot better than any Intel counterparts. Because Intel versions, if you just give stress test for both CPU and GPU, and the CPU basically dies already at 1.6 gigahertz or so. So AMD is definitely doing a much better job. Currently, the power envelope is limited to 14 watts, which is the same as the previous standalone test, and the temperature is very low. So overall, the laptop, the power output is pretty good. In the short term, it can give you very good performance, and in the long term, it can give you acceptable performance, not really decent, but still acceptable. And if you consider the convertible type and the slimness of the laptop, this is definitely one of the strong side of this laptop. So there's nothing really to complain about. So although it's a routine update for this series, but definitely with the Ryzen 4000 processor, it makes everything so fast, and you can use it for some type of productivity work without too much worry.